If you're trying to make any kind of meaningful, effective change in your life, you've come to the right place. Good day, ladies and gents. Welcome back to We're Talking Shift. Today, I have Chris Wark back again for part 2 of a conversation that we started last week, all about how Chris beat cancer. Yes, he actually beat cancer, which is also, by the way, the name of his best-selling book. Chris, he is literally a walking testimonial on what's possible when you have the courage to go rogue, break protocol, and do things your way. We covered a lot of ground last week, but there was a lot that I wanted to talk to him about that we didn't get to. So I had to get him back this week, and thankfully he said no problem. Before, though, we dive into part 2, I do want to encourage you, if you missed last week's, go back, listen to part 1, and then return over here to part 2 and listen to what else we've got going on. All right, onward. Welcome back, Chris.
Hi, Loree. Thanks for having me.
Of course. I really appreciate another chunk of your time, but there's just too much good stuff that you've been doing and sharing that are so valuable for so many people that I couldn't let it go where we left off. So just to quickly recap before we jump in. So in 2003, you were diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer. You had surgery to remove a chunk of your colon, but then your doctor said, not so fast. You need to do chemo, which we talked about last week. But you did not mention, I don't believe, what your doctor said about like your future. Like, what did he say your prognosis was with or without that treatment? And that, because that obviously is when you had some thinking to do. And
Yeah, so I was told by the first oncologist that I saw that I had a 60% chance of living 5 years with treatment. Now, I didn't ask him what my chances were without treatment. And that's a very good question to ask. In fact, that's something that I talk about in my free guide, 20 Questions for Your Oncologist, which is available on chrisbeatcancer.com. There's a link to it on every page. Or you can go to chrisbeatcancer.com/20 and download it. This is an invaluable guide of questions that you, or if you're a patient or if you're a caregiver, need to ask your oncologist before you start treatment. If you've already started treatment, these are still good questions to ask. But yeah, one of them is, what are my odds of survival with treatment and without? So anyway, He told me my odds were 60% with treatment, and that was not very encouraging.
No, and it's 60% for only 5 years, right?
That's, well, yeah, 60%, 5 years.
So go on.
Yeah, 60%, that's basic. That's not much better than 50%, and 50% is a coin toss. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, well, that's not very encouraging. The very same year, that was January 2004. That same year, there was this a landmark study published called The Contribution of Cytotoxic Chemotherapy to 5-Year Survival in Adult Malignancies. And this study found that chemotherapy only contributes about 2% to 5-year survival. And this was across, 20, maybe 22 different cancers. So it wasn't like every cancer ever, but they looked at 22 different types of cancer in the US and Australia, and determined how much of an impact chemotherapy was making. So it was very little, right, on average. Now, some cancers, chemo works really well. It works really, really well for childhood leukemia. It works really well for, for testicular cancer. Those are probably the 2 highest success rate cancers for chemo. It also is better than average for lymphomas. But it's the solid tumor cancers that are really the problem. And they've made virtually no progress in reducing the death rate of solid tumor cancers with chemotherapy in 60 years. In fact, the death rate of all cancers in 60 years, and the death rate is the true measure of success, right? 5-year survival is not an appropriate measure of success, because that's a figure that's easy to manipulate statistically. Yeah. But the overall death rate. That's the true number. Are we reducing the number of cancer deaths? And that's only come down 5% in 60 years.
But yet they keep doing it.
Right. Yeah, they keep doing it because that's where the most money is to be made, right?
Yeah.
So many doctors are good people, but they're just trapped in a system that pays them really well, and it doesn't matter what the results are. Moliere said it hundreds of years ago. He said, "I believe medicine is the best of all trades because whether you do any good or not, you still get your money."
Wow. And there you have it. Yeah. So, okay. I feel like I get really, really annoyed when doctors tell patients how much time they have. I think it's such a huge disservice, number one, and it really can have a massive nocebo effect,
Yes,
right? I mean, it's like they're playing God. Well, you know what? You may do okay. You got a 60% chance, perhaps, like in your case. But even then, we give you 5 years. I mean, what do you think about that? That's horrible.
I don't think they should do it. I think when a doctor says you have 3 months to live, or 6 months to live, or a year to live, or 2 years to live, I think what they're doing is they're putting a hex on their patients.
Yeah.
They're putting a curse on them,
Yeah.
psychological curse, a medical hex, and that person, your belief is really powerful. And if the doctor tells you you're going to die in a year, and you believe them, you'll die in a year. I mean,
Right.
it's like clockwork if you believe
Yeah,
them.
the self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah. So what we encourage people to do in our community is to reject that prognosis, right? Reject the prognosis and say, you know what? You're going to be wrong. I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm not going to
Yep.
die in 6 months. I'm not going to die in a year. You do not have the authority to determine the end of my life, right? No man has the authority to determine the end of your life unless you give it to them. And
Right.
so you have to make a stand for yourself and just make a decision to prove them wrong,
Yeah.
right? And let that, fuel your determination to get well. So I think
It's
that's really
true.
important. Doctors shouldn't be saying those kind of things to patients. They should say, we really don't know, but now is the time you need to change your life, right?
Yeah.
Now is a critical time. We don't know how much time you have, and I don't want to say because I'm not God, right? That's what a doctor
Yes.
should say.
Yes.
Um, but uh, your future is in God's hands, but it's also in your hands, and your
Totally.
choices matter. And you can make decisions now that can improve your quality of life and can reduce your odds of dying, right? That can increase your odds of survival. This is the
Mm-hmm.
message that I am bringing to the masses, that your choices matter, that you are not a victim of disease, and that you don't have to sit in a state of helplessness and hopelessness with your fingers crossed, wondering if you're going to die, right? You can take massive action to change your life. What you put in your mouth matters. The way you think and act matters. Exercise is incredibly important. Forgiveness is
Mm-hmm.
so powerful. Like all these things are things you can do. Most of them cost you nothing. And if you're willing to change your life, then you can reap tremendous mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical benefits from your choices.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
change your future, right? You can change your life by changing your daily routine. So, I talk about this a lot in my first book, Chris Beat Cancer, but then I also wrote a second book called Beat Cancer Daily, which is a daily reader. So it's like a daily devotional. It's 365 days, and you just read one page per day. And it's just, it's me basically encouraging the reader, giving them inspiration and encouragement and practical reminders to walk out this healing journey, right? Because it is a daily journey. You can't fix
Mhm.
yesterday. You can't do anything tomorrow. All you can do is today, right? That's all you got. You got right now, you got today. And so if you focus on making each day the best you can make it, right? Making healthy choices, being disciplined, and choosing joy and living in a state of gratitude, counting your blessings, and really changing the way that you are, which everyone can change. People think like, oh, I can't change. Everyone can change. All you have to do is be willing.
Yeah.
And so that book is just a daily encouragement, to help people walk out the healing journey. And then of course I've got this brand new
Yeah.
cookbook, Beat Cancer Kitchen, which is all plant-based recipes. So this is sort of my triad of
Yeah. That's awesome. No, it is because a lot of people, they don't have the, I don't know what you want to call it, the metal, the motivation, the whatever is required to go out and unearth this information
well,
themselves.
it's
So
the
I
will
think
to
a lot
live.
of people want to, yeah,
That's
yeah,
what you're talking
it
about.
is the will. It is
Some people
yeah, I
don't
agree.
have a strong will to live. That is the
Some people
reality.
don't.
And
Yeah. And I
what
think,
I've seen over and over is for some people the cancer diagnosis is a relief because
mm-hmm,
it is a way out of a life
yes,
that has been very difficult.
I
And
agree.
so for others, the cancer diagnosis is, of course, bad news and terrible and tragic, but they come to really enjoy being the victim and the object of sympathy and pity. Because all of a
Oh,
sudden,
sure, sure.
well, think about it. All of a sudden, someone who maybe has never felt loved and cared for and appreciated is now being loved on and cared for, right, in a way they never
Oh,
have
yeah,
before. All of a sudden, everybody's
sure.
calling and sending cards and dropping off flowers and how are you doing and making you meals and all of a sudden you're in a sense you're being pampered and
Sure. It
some
checks
people.
it checks that human need for significance when, there's a lot of ways to check that box, and one of them is by being sick. And it's a powerful need. And if you have felt, invisible or unimportant or taken for granted or, just not seen your whole life, and then you get sick and you experience what it feels like to all of a sudden become significant and important, and people are noticing you and trying to take care of you, to your point, that can be a powerful addiction.
Absolutely. And we all know people that have the poor me pattern, right? Is they
Yeah.
get attention for themselves by constantly having a problem in life, right? It's like they create problems for themselves so then they can derive sympathy from others
Yeah.
and it is sad. I'm not a judge of those people, but I am an observer
Yeah.
of that behavior. And what we know is that if you want to get well, that attitude, that behavior, that mindset will not work for you, right? If you
Yeah.
want to get well, you have to stop being a victim and you have to take on the attitude and the mindset of a victor, right? You have
Yes.
to decide, I'm going to beat this. I'm going to win. I'm going to survive. I'm going to thrive. I'm going to heal. And when I get well, I'm going to help other people heal. This is the attitude that
Yeah.
I see over and over again. We call it the beat cancer mindset. And there's several components, but the first component is believing you can get well, right?
Belief. The belief is the most powerful thing, right? I mean, it
Yeah,
really is.
without that,
You
a
got to start
person
there.
won't
That's the
change.
foundation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a person will not change their life if they don't believe they can get well. If they don't believe that their choices will help them, they're not going to change anything. They're not going to quit smoking. They're not going to quit drinking alcohol. They're not going to get off of drugs. They're not going to lose weight. They're not going to exercise. They're not going to change their diet. They're not going to forgive. They're not going to do anything, right? They are
Right.
not going to change if they don't believe that change will help them. So believing you can get well is the most important thing. And then from there, there's sort of a logical progression of thought and belief, which is, okay, if you believe you can get well, do you want to get well?
Mhm.
Do you want to live? Do you want to get well? And that's a question that each patient needs to ask themselves, right? Honestly and sincerely. And some people don't want to get well, and it's okay, right? If you're elderly, right? If you've lived a long life and you feel like, my mission is accomplished,
Yeah.
great. That's great. Enjoy your life. You don't need to fight to survive, whatever fighting means, right? You don't
Hmm.
need to do every chemo, drug under the sun to live an extra 4 months so your
Right.
family is not sad, or
Right.
whatever, right? Like
And really
there's
now
no
with the
need to
compromised
suffer
quality of life too.
for sure. There's no need to suffer. Like enjoy your life. I love the story of a woman, a story I still tell the story often, but there's a woman named Norma Bauerschmidt, and she was diagnosed with cancer, and I think she was in her 80s. She was pretty old, maybe even 90s. I should get that fact straight. But anyway, she was elderly, and she refused all treatment and decided to go on a road trip in an RV with her son and the dog, and they traveled all over the country for about a year. And they were blogging and making videos and posting photos. You can Google this. It's Driving Miss Norma. If you Google Driving Miss Norma, you can find this story and photos and this wonderful thing. And so she spent the last year of her life doing all these things she'd never done before, seeing all these places she'd never been, and just had a great time. And then eventually her health declined, and she went into hospice for a few weeks, and she died. And it's like, that is a great way to go right there.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a person who chose to live and die on their own terms.
Yeah.
Which is the same decision I made. And I'm very thankful that I survived and that I'm alive. But
so on your decision though, before you move on, Chris, like how much fear and trepidation did you have about making the decision to heal yourself rather than go through the traditional route? And did you ever second guess yourself or think you made the wrong decision? I mean,
yeah,
what was that like?
Lots of fear and lots of second guessing. That, fear is a constant threat to your happiness and to your well-being and your peace of mind when you have cancer. And every day you're dealing with fear. It's creeping in, and you can get distracted. The best moments in what I call phase 1 of a cancer journey, which is like the beginning, the best moments are those moments where you get distracted and you just get busy working, on something or doing something, and you forget that you have cancer, and it's just wonderful. And then, but eventually something will remind you. Sure. And then this wave of fear, right, just crashes down on you, and your pulse quickens. You end up in this fight or flight response physiologically, and so I had to learn to deal with that because I realized I can't live in a constant state of fear. I can't just be overwhelmed by fear every time I think about cancer. Every time I hear the word cancer on the news or on TV or on the radio, right? It's hilarious and ironic. And I didn't tell this story in my book, and I should have, or maybe I did tell it in the book. I forget in my first book, but the very first movie that I went to go see after my diagnosis, right? It was like maybe the next day or a couple days later. It's like, let's go see a movie. Okay, what's playing? And, I just wanted to see a movie. And I saw this movie called The Butterfly Effect. And, it was okay. But one of the characters gets cancer in the movie. And it's like,
great.
And dies. Right.
Oh, no.
Dies. Yeah. And it was just like, oh my gosh, great choice. So yeah. Anyway, I mean, you don't notice the word cancer until you have it. And then you just see it everywhere and you hear it everywhere. And it's like, oh my gosh, please stop reminding me. But so what I had to do is I had to give my worries and my fears to God. I just had to stop in that moment of fear and say, God, I trust you. I'm giving you my fear. I'm not going to worry. I'm not going to be afraid. I trust you. Show me what I need to do. Show me what I need to change. And I'm not going to let this steal my joy. And in that moment, I also would practice gratitude, and I would say, thank you, right? I'm not going to be afraid. And thank you that I'm alive, that I have a wife who loves me, that I have a home, that I have food in the refrigerator, that I have enough money to pay my next set of bills. Which
is something we should all be doing every day anyway.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Gratitude is
preventative.
The secret. Yeah, gratitude's a secret to happiness. And the problem with so many people, the reason they're unhappy is because they're focused on the things they don't have.
Right.
They're focused on the things they think they deserve, or the things that they think other people have and don't deserve. They're focused on inequality instead of comparing yourself to people that have more than you, which all that will do will foster jealousy, envy, resentment, bitterness, and unhappiness, right? Focus on people who have less than you. And then you realize, I am so blessed, right? I have so much to be thankful for. I didn't wake up in a cave, right? I didn't wake up in in prison. I didn't wake up in a
Mm-hmm.
hospital bed. I didn't wake up in a communist country, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So, it's if you just get over yourself for a minute and think
Yeah.
about other people in the world, really think about what life is like for millions of people in the world that live in poverty. It's just so easy to get over these petty jealousy and envy and, these feelings that you
Mm-hmm.
may have. And believe me, I struggled. I had to get over this. Like, I had to learn these lessons.
Mm-hmm.
I was a very envious, jealous, competitive, insecure, prideful person. And, I was not happy for anyone's success. I was jealous of them. I was envious of them. When I got cancer, all of a sudden I found myself feeling resentful toward anybody who didn't have cancer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Feeling sorry for myself and resenting, just like, look at this, jerk walking on the street,
Mm-hmm.
why didn't that guy have cancer? So those are not healthy thoughts.
Yeah. So when you had to change your mindset, obviously, for you, was it a Shazam moment? Like one day you woke up and went, God, I'm just being a bitch. I need to change. This is bull. This is bull. Or was it a kind of a gradual realization over a course of time?
You know, I it wasn't like there was one moment. I feel like it was gradual, and
Mm-hmm.
it took constant reminding. Like, I was reading books written by cancer survivors and books written by holistic doctors and healers, and those themes, those ideas were pervasive.
Mm-hmm.
You just, when you talk to people who've survived terminal cancer and doctors who've treated countless terminal cancer patients, these kind of things come up a lot.
Yeah.
And there's a deep understanding in this community and people that have been around a long time or around this community about those things and how harmful and destructive they are, how harmful your mindset and your attitude and your emotions can be if you let them run wild.
Yes, that's so true. I remember hearing a story that you told on one of your YouTube shows about your cousin Jeff. Um, he was saying something about, he didn't buy into the I think he said fads or the self-help books, because he would tell that story and how you guys
Yeah.
were so different and how that played out.
Yeah, I have a cousin Jeff who was a little older than me, maybe 5 years older than me or so, and he got colon cancer. Uh, I don't know, something like maybe 5 or 6, 7 years after I did.
Hmm.
And you know, I reached out to him. I emailed him and said, "Hey, man, love to talk. Love to be helpful if I can." And um, he knew I had gone through it and survived and whatever. And but he never responded. But I was through the grapevine, basically his mother told me, she had been pestering him to talk to me, and his is obviously my aunt. And he just never did. And he sent her an email that was forwarded to me, and it was basically like, I don't buy into all that self-help stuff. And he had surgery, and then he did chemo. The doctor said if you do chemo, he was stage 4. If you do chemo, you should live about 1 to 2 years. And he was like,
Oh,
okay, if you do treatment, right? Treatment, all that entails. So he
right.
had surgery. He was feeling a lot better after surgery. And then they started him on chemo, and he was dead in 6 months. So,
I mean, Chris, it's so bizarre that here you are, like 6, 7 years after your diagnosis, you've basically healed yourself. You did not do the standard protocol, and he's saying, it's all poppycock.
I mean, I read some of his emails, and it just sounded like from the onset. This is great that you brought this up, because it really sort of closes the loop from what we talked about at the beginning of the conversation, which is he accepted that he was going to die, right? He just accepted it. He's like, I'm going to die. Cancer's going to kill me, and I'm just going to try to make the most of my life. He still did treatment. right? He did treatment because the doctor, convinced him that that would help him live longer, which was a complete
Yeah.
lie. It was false, and it accelerated his death. At least the chemotherapy did. The surgery, which probably would still have been helpful. But yeah, it's just, that's just an example of two different ways to approach cancer,
Yeah.
right?
Two totally different mindsets.
We had
one
two
end of the
different
spectrum to the other.
mindsets.
Yeah.
We took two different paths, and I didn't know him that well. Yeah, we never lived in the same city, and we'd only met in person a few times.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was, there's a bigger lesson there too, which is sometimes the people that you want to help the most are the people you can't help.
Yes. And that's, that was another point I wanted to ask you about, like the role that other people in your life that are close to you, what role do they play? How important is that? I mean, if they're like for you, you chose to go, I'm going rogue, I'm doing this my way. That had to be just as scary for those close to you as
Yes.
it was for you. And how important is it that they get on board and support you rather than, continuing to maybe encourage you to go the traditional route to assuage their own fears?
Well, you can't put a value on support. I mean, it's the greatest thing in the world to have people around you that support what you're doing. Okay. I did not have that in the beginning.
Mm.
And at the end of the day, it's up to you. This is your life, right? So support or not, what are you going to do, right? Do you want to live? How bad do you want to live? Are you willing to change your life? Get busy. Like, you can't use the lack of support as an excuse for inaction, which I see people do sometimes, well, no one supports me. Well, who cares, right? Do you want to live or not?
Right.
And so that's
or they allow themselves to be talked into what everybody else thinks is best. They're everyone else thinks this is best, so
that often happens for sure.
I
when
heard,
they don't get I was just gonna say, when they don't get support, some folks end up doing things they don't want to do, right? Just to appease the people around them, right? To appease some doctor that they don't even know. Right, this doctor who wouldn't even know their name if they saw him in the grocery store. Seriously, the doctors are seeing 20, 30 patients a day. Like you got to see a doctor a bunch of times before they remember your name. And yet, you're too afraid to say no to this stranger. I think, but that's inherent in this problematic medical system and cancer treatment system, is that there's so much fear, right? That the fear consumes the patient and they're powerless to say no. And a lot of people are people pleasers, right? They just want to be people pleasers. They don't want conflict. They don't want to argue. They just want to go with the flow. And, they are in a sense followers. We're all followers to some degree, right? Look at social media. Like we're all following people, right? But But there are critical moments in your life where there's an opportunity for you to stand up and be a leader. And because there's no one to follow, right? And I mean, there are people to follow, but they're not going where you want to go.
Yeah,
exactly.
And I mean, you could be a follower, but what if the group you're following or the leader you're following is walking off the edge of a cliff?
Yeah. Well, look at what's happened in the last year and a half. Look at how many people have followed the authorities, and look at the mess we've created, right? From following people who are absolutely incompetent, who have no idea how to solve a problem, and but are telling people what to do, who trust them, who think they're going to solve their problem.
Yeah.
And all they've done is compound it. Yeah. Right? They've compounded the problems of the world with horrible strategies. I'm speaking esoterically, but I think everyone knows what I'm talking about. So
I know, and I'm 100% with you. It's beyond disgusting, frankly. It's beyond disgusting what's going on.
And what's disgusting about it is that by and large, most of it was completely unnecessary. Everything we're dealing with right now, completely unnecessary. And there are countries that responded differently that are doing really great, like Sweden.
Yeah, not
Doing so
only
much better.
unnecessary, not only unnecessary, but extraordinarily harmful on a
Yes.
multitude of levels, psychologically, physically, socially, on every level, extremely harmful. And that's what is so disgusting and irresponsible.
Yeah,
Yes, we
and it'll
could.
take years to calculate the collateral damage. Yeah, it will take years,
Mhm.
and books and books and books will be written about what has happened in the last year and a half and how horribly mismanaged the whole thing was. But here's the thing, you know, when all this started happening in March 2020, I made a Facebook video. It's still on Facebook, talking about my thoughts and what I was seeing in the very, very beginning. I was seeing the same patterns that we've seen in the cancer industry for decades, right? Fear, manipulation, coercion, lack of
Mhm.
data, lack of evidence, jumping to conclusions, right? Chicken little type
Yeah.
fear mongering.
Yeah.
And I was just seeing red flag after red flag. I'm like, this is not new, right? I've seen this
Mhm.
playbook. This is the way patients are manipulated through fear and rushed into cancer treatment. And I'm now
Yeah.
seeing this play out on a global scale. And most of these people don't know they don't understand it's happening to them, right? But I understand it because I've seen it over and over. I'm like, no, this is a deliberate strategy to sell you drugs. That's what this is, right? This
Really,
is
that's the bottom
fear.
line.
This is fear mongering for profit. This is what it
Yes.
is. And
Yes.
so, yeah, and anyway, we've seen all that play out. But
Yeah.
in the cancer world, um, it's very important that the patient understands that they will be manipulated by fear if they're not aware, right? It's easy to be manipulated by fear, and you have to be aware of. And this plays out for any person actually, but like you need to be really conscious every time you turn on the news. Ask yourself, is this
Mhm.
fear mongering right now? And I'm
Right.
telling you, it is, right? Every news story is driven by fear, anxiety, conflict. That's what attracts your attention as a human, right? You're attracted to
Right.
conflict and fear and uncertainty. And like what's happening in the Middle East? What's happening in Russia? What's happening in China? What's happening with the economy?
Mhm.
What's happening with the election? What did this politician say about that politician, right? It's constant conflict, and that keeps your attention, right? So you want to, oh, what's next? What's
Mhm.
going to happen next? Who's going to say what? Like, I got to know. And so people get sucked into this addictive media consumption, watching the
Mhm.
news all night. I mean, every night or all day, or just keeping, like, just staying, oh, I got to stay informed. Well, you're not really informed, right? You're just being manipulated.
Manipulated.
And what are
Right.
they
Right. They're
manipulating
playing
you
to your
for?
emotions.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
I don't want to be very clear here because I don't want people to think, oh, it's just a conspiracy theory. Let me be very clear. The news media runs scary stories because they attract your eyeballs, and the more eyeballs they get, the more money they make from advertisements.
Mhm.
That's the game, right?
Mhm.
That is the game. You want to take it to deeper levels of conspiracy and control, that's fine. But the game, at least on the surface, is that the more eyeballs they get, the more they can charge Pfizer and Merck and Ford, right? And Nabisco for their ads.
Right.
So they figured this out many, many, many decades ago. If it bleeds, it leads. Scary news stories, anxiety driven, fear producing news stories attract the most attention. So
Mhm.
that's what they're going to put out there. They're not going to be telling you,
Right.
feel good stories about people who, I mean, they'll sprinkle a few in there, right? They'll
Yeah.
sprinkle a
It's
few
so.
in,
Yeah. It's
but it's
so. Like you said, it's
mostly,
sprinkled. It's.
yeah, it's mostly the bad
Yeah.
news, right? So,
It's mostly the bad news. Yeah. We don't
so
hear
what's the
about
point?
all of the good stories. We don't hear enough. We don't, what we should be hearing is more of the success rates of people that have and are, recovering from or, beating whatever,
Right.
whatever the illness of the day is. We should be hearing those because there are plenty of those that we're not hearing about. All you hear about are distorted stats that make, people more
Yeah.
fearful, as
And
you
your
say.
mind, the human mind is not equipped. It is not capable of the level of information consumption that we are experiencing, especially when we're talking about negative information, right? Fear and
Right.
anxiety producing information. And every time you watch the news or you're reading articles online or whatever, you're taking a dose, right? You're dosing. And that is a dose of fear. And think about it. I mean, how many
Mm-hmm.
doses does it take to make you put you in a state of complete and total paranoia, anxiety, and fear, right? Not that many. And so you have to, like, cold turkey, you've got to stop watching the news. You've got to cut off this daily injection of fear in your life, whether you have cancer or not, because it will make you more stressed, more unhappy, more inflamed, more immunosuppressed, all of those things. And those are not conducive to living a peaceful, happy, joyful life. They're just not
Healthy life.
a
Mm-hmm.
healthy life,
No.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. They suppress your immune system and actually make you more susceptible to disease.
Yes.
So you're right. By taking in all of that fear and negativity in doses daily, you literally are setting yourself up to become ill in some manner. I want to ask you, because I want to be respectful of your time. I want to ask you your thoughts on, because I know they're very similar to mine, and I was so glad to see that somebody else was actually speaking about it, on cancer charities. And then we'll wrap it up with a recap on the diet and the mindset that you need to conquer cancer. Give me your thoughts on some of these fundraising cancer charity initiatives.
Well, the big ones are the worst. Komen, the American Cancer Society, these charities, they raise millions and millions of dollars. And where does the money go? Well, for Komen, only about 20% of it goes to cancer research. 80% of it goes to marketing and salaries and whatever. So 20 cents out of every dollar goes to cancer research. And you think, oh, you're really doing something. But even that 20 cents that is going to cancer research, that's just free money for the drug companies, right?
Yeah.
It's the best. It's literally the best, the most sophisticated, and my hat is off, right? Because this is such a sophisticated grift. The drug companies fund these cancer charities. The cancer charities raise money for the drug companies. The drug companies get this free money they use to develop drugs that they then patent and sell back to you, right? That is the ultimate
Yeah.
grift. And so, I've done a fundraiser several times. That's basically what we tell people is in October, give to patients, not to Komen. So in other words, you want to give money to cancer to help cancer, find a cancer patient and put some money in their hand, right? None of it will be wasted. I can assure you, right? They need money for groceries.
With all of the research, right?
For gas, for rent,
they
for
need money
treatments.
For help.
Yeah, you want to do some real good, and put cash money in their hands.
And the interesting thing is, I mean, how many decades now have they been doing cancer research, and been collecting, millions and millions, probably billions at this point, of dollars. And what's the survival rate these days? Has it changed at all?
Right.
Has
billions
there been really
and billions
any major improvement?
Right, exactly. Like I said earlier, multi-billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars have been wasted on cancer research and used to develop drugs that are largely ineffective at reducing the death rate, and the death rate's only come down 5% in 60 years. So yeah, it's a colossal waste. So I don't like the big cancer charities at all. They're just big marketing companies. But there's some wonderful small charities, like Healing Strong is an incredible cancer charity. Actually, that's there right there. And that is a network of cancer support groups, holistic cancer support groups, real people meeting in their homes, meeting on Zoom, encouraging each other, supporting each other. It's just absolutely the best. I wish it existed when I was sick, right? but it didn't. It was founded probably 10 years later, or 8 years later, something like that. But healingstrong.org is an amazing organization, a great place to connect if you have cancer and you're looking for holistic support, like from other real people who've been through it and survived, or that are on the journey with you. It's awesome. So that's a charity that's doing great things, and I love them. And then Annie Appleseed.
Research.
Yeah, the Annie Appleseed Foundation, they do a cancer conference every year in Florida, an alternative and complementary cancer conference that I've spoken at. And that's run by my friend Ann Fonfa, who's a stage 4 cancer survivor, over 20 years. And another wonderful charity doing good stuff. So I don't want to throw them all under the bus, but the big ones that everybody knows about, they're not interested in curing cancer. They're not,
No, they'd be out of jobs.
Right.
What would they do all day?
Right.
All those pink clothes and pink ribbons and pink shoes and pink backpacks and oh Lord.
Yeah.
Would be
there
just
will never be a
waste,
cure.
So.
I mean, there's hundreds of different types of cancer. So this idea that we're one step closer to the cure, it's just a complete fabrication, right? It's deception, it's false, it's marketing. Like there's never going to be a cure, right? There's hundreds of types of cancers, and no one drug's going to cure them all. And as we've seen, most of the drugs have dismal cure rates. Immunotherapy drugs are a little better. I mean, they're making progress there. And some of them are working better than chemotherapy for a few types of cancer. That's the whole new emerging frontier. But the side effects can be pretty bad too, right? So they're not without risks and side effects. So even that, it's encouraging. It's a step in the right direction. At least the medical system and the cancer industry is acknowledging, oh, hey, the patient's immune system is pretty important, and their immune system can actually solve this problem, right? If we can stimulate their immune system, which they're trying to do, but they're not interested in stimulating the immune system with food and exercise and stress reduction, right? And forgiveness. They're not interested in doing it that way because there's no money in those approaches, right? So
exactly,
that's the tragedy, is all of the wonderful, and I mean, hundreds of thousands of studies, I'm not exaggerating, on nutritional science, on anti-cancer compounds in nature, right? In fruits and vegetables, herbs, nuts, seeds, and spices, that research exists. It's on PubMed. There's more of it than you can even read. I try to summarize a lot of it. I'm not even a lot of it, but I try to summarize some of the most important highlights in my first book, Chris Beat Cancer. It's like, just so a person, again, almost everything I do can be boiled down to one thing. Like, what is my ultimate goal? It's to help a person believe they can get well, right? To show them enough evidence to foster that belief, right? Because I know if I can foster the belief in someone that they can get well, then I have done something, right? They got to take the ball and run with it. But I've given them, the thing that I got, right? Which is that spark of hope. Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm trying to do, right? That's what my books are about. That's what my website's about. I mean, that's why I do interviews. It could be boiled down to that one thing, to help people really come to understand and believe that they can get well, that your body creates cancer, your body can heal it.
It's possible.
If given the proper nutrients and care.
Right. So, and it's not just the stuff that you eat. It's your mindset too. I know you have to go, so I want to recap this. Like, besides, so you've got diet, you've got mindset, and you did other things too, right? You did chiropractic, you did acupuncture. Do I have that right? You did therapeutic massage. You just did everything that seemed like that would be healthy and good for you. You just did it.
Yeah, I had a real simple filter. Yeah, I had sort of a simple filter for determining what to do. And it was this. Mm-hmm. Does this have any risk of harm? Yes or no, right? If the answer is no, okay. And does it have a potential benefit? And if the answer to that is yes, then I would do it, right? Well, there's the third question. Can I afford it? Right? So if there's no risk of harm and it could possibly help, and I could afford it, I had time to do it, I had access to it, I could afford to do it, whatever the therapy was, I would do it. So yeah, chiropractic care, Rolfing, structural integration, acupuncture, Reiki. I had IV vitamin C treatments, saunas, you name it. Like anything and everything I could find and afford, and that includes tons of supplements.
Yeah.
I would take them, right? I would do it. I would just say, you know what? I'm open. Maybe this will help. If it doesn't help, I'm okay with it, but there's no risk of harm. So let's do it.
Perfect. And when you did that though, you probably, so, you're doing all of these things that you can afford, that are going to do no harm, and that are going to make you, if nothing else, feel better and could possibly be helpful. But when you started doing all those things, and I imagine there were certain things like in your diet, for example, and your thinking, your thoughts, that you stopped doing. So
For sure.
there was a stuff you stopped, you replaced the negative stuff that you are thinking or eating with the good stuff, and then basically you said, "Hey, it's me and you, God, let's do this."
Yeah. It's kind of like this. You have to identify everything in your life that may be contributing to disease. That's step one. And step two is replacing those things with health promoters, right? You identify the disease
Yeah.
promoters, and whether that's food, lack of exercise, bad thoughts, negative thinking, bad habits, right? Smoking, drinking, drug use, on, right? You've got to identify everything that may be contributing to your disease and replace those things with health promoters. That is what I did. That's what I encourage everyone in our community to do. It's like, you can't do it all in one day. You can't do it overnight. It's a process, but
Right.
you can do some pretty big things overnight. You can change your diet overnight. You can start
Yeah.
exercising
Yeah.
overnight, right? The mental and emotional and spiritual stuff, that takes time. You have to work through it, right? It takes time to change the
Right.
way you think, to catch yourself thinking negatively and actively choose to think positively and to practice gratitude, right? That is a habit you have to develop. You got to retrain your brain. But
Mm-hmm.
all of these things can be done. And so I just want to totally concur with you. It's important. There's a process of addition and subtraction, right? You're subtracting harmful
Yeah.
things, you're adding helpful things. And my approach really was kind of like the kitchen sink approach. It was just everything but the
Yeah.
kitchen sink, assuming those things did not have a risk of harm. So that's why I said no to chemotherapy, because I like, this has a huge risk of harm, and I'm just not ready to do it.
Yeah.
I never said to myself, I'll never do that. But I did say, I'm not ready to do that now, right? Maybe later, but right
I
now I
like
want to
that.
change my life. I want to build up my body. I want to go hardcore healthy, get on the hardcore healthy path and see what happens, right? I want to take care of myself in a way that I never have before. I was excited about doing that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it made sense to me. So I got out of a vicious cycle, right? I broke a vicious cycle and I created a virtuous cycle, right? So the vicious cycle, your health spirals down, right? Virtuous
Mm-hmm.
cycle, your health spirals up. So
That's awesome.
yeah,
That's so cool. I love that. Chris, your books, I mean, the easiest place to tell people to find out more about you, which by the way, before I go there, so this is it's 17, do I have that right? 17 years later since you were diagnosed?
it'll be
And
18 in December.
okay, so 18 years later, after your doctor said, 60% chance of maybe 5 years. And here we are 18 years later, and you are healthy, you are thriving, and you have written three amazing books that are giving other people a blueprint, a map to follow that may find themselves in a similar situation, or to give to somebody that they love. I mean, you're a walking testimonial to what is possible. And I love that. And here you are being able to help so many other people. That's amazing. I applaud you, and I'm grateful for what you're doing in the world.
Thank you. It feels
So,
good. It feels good to serve other people. It feels good to be helpful and to share what you've learned. And and to see people get well, right? When people email me and say, thank you, you changed my life, right? I'm cancer free, my scans are clear, my blood work's
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
I found you 5 years ago, and then my doctor gave me a year to live, and I'm still here. I get those messages constantly, and it's the best feeling in the world, and that's why I keep
Mm.
doing it. If no one was
Yeah.
being helped
That's
by
amazing.
what I do, I would have stopped 10 years ago.
Sure. Sure. But no, we need more people like you, and I'm really grateful for what you're doing. So the best place for people to find you, again, we'll put this in the show notes, is chrisbeatcancer.com, correct?
Yeah, that is the best place to find me. Jump on the email newsletter. I've got tons of free resources. The whole website is free. I've interviewed dozens of doctors and PhD scientists who are
Hmm.
experts in nutrition and cancer prevention and healing. I've interviewed dozens of against the odds holistic survivors of all types and stages of cancer that you will get tremendous encouragement from. If you can type in the search bar, you can type in breast cancer, colon cancer, lung cancer. You can type in vitamin C. You can type in vitamin D. I mean, there's tons of articles there to help you survive and thrive.
Perfect.
So that's what the site's for. And of course,
Yeah.
my books are easy to find. They're all three books are on Amazon. You can get them from Barnes and Noble and all the major booksellers. If you want to support your local independent bookstores, they can get my books. They're all published by
Mhm.
Hay House and distributed by Penguin Random House. So, I mean, they're easy to
Yeah.
find, but shameless plug, the brand new
Yes.
book, Beat Cancer Kitchen, full color cookbook. There's 125 recipes in here. They're all plant-based and super delicious. My wife and I wrote this together, and it comes out. Well, it's out
It's out now.
Tuesday, November 16th.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is
It's out
out.
now. So yeah, so no excuses, people. If you want to go ahead and follow in Chris's footsteps, he's got it all there right for you. He'll just tell you what to do, how to think, what to cook, what to eat. It's all right there for you. So I would say you have nothing to lose by following the path that Chris took. It's worked wonders for him. So Chris, thank you so much again for all of your time. I love this, and make sure you let me know when you have another book coming out, and we'll talk again.
All right. Thank you,
So
Lori. It was really fun to
yeah,
talk to you. Keep up the good work.
thank you very much. And that's a wrap, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with Chris and I today. Please make sure you check out his YouTube channel and his website, chrisbeatcancer.com. There's so much good stuff there. If you want to find out what coaching with me is all about, just head on over to loreebischoff.com. And please give this a rating and share it with somebody that you think could benefit and find value in what we're talking about here. There's a lot of good shift being shared. Until next week, stay feisty, my friends. Stay healthy and go make some epic shift happen in your lives. You too, Gary V.